Welcome to Marine Tech Talk, a podcast about how Teledyne Marine's innovative technologies are enabling scientific discoveries and commercial tasks in the world's oceans and waterways. In this fall series of podcasts, we introduce some of the winners and general entrants from the 2020 Teledyne Marine Photo Contest. Teledyne's annual photo and data contest concluded with over 80 qualified submissions that helped the company donate more than $1,200 to Save the Children as part of our charitable giving campaign. In this episode, we speak with Tim Noyes, an earlier winner of our academic grant and now the winner of our Teamwork Makes the Dream Work Award for this year's Teledyne Marine Photo Contest. Tim explains the photo, a bit about his PhD work at BIOS, and some exciting data they were able to capture during a recent deployment of their Teledyne RD Instruments ADCP. Now, here's Tim Noyes with the host of Marine Tech Talk, Melissa Rossi.
Hi everybody and welcome to Marine Tech Talk. We are back today with one of the winners of our photo contest. So today we have Tim Noyes. He's a PhD candidate for the University of Salford in the UK and is working out at BIOS in Bermuda. Welcome, Tim. Nice to have you on the show, or back on the show, and I'll explain that in a minute. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Melissa.
So, Tim, we had you, for our listeners, if you are a first-time listener, welcome. If you are a repeat listener, maybe you heard Tim's episode. Tim was one of our academic grant winners earlier this year and met me here on the show to talk about his grant that he won and the research that he's doing in the Bermuda area and what he had intended with his awarded equipment. From there, we had Teledyne Marine hosted a photo contest, and Tim submitted some photos, and one of the photos that Tim submitted won one of our major awards, which was Teamwork Makes the Dream Work Award. Great name. So it was a great image of Tim and his team, I'll assume, working with a piece of equipment, either deploying or recovering, but I'm going to let Tim tell us about that. So Tim, in that great photo that you sent to us, what exactly was happening in the photo?
We were in the process of deploying the Sentinel-V ADCP with the acoustic release. The picture doesn't quite tell the true story. That was the second attempt to do this. The mooring setup itself has a rope canister on board, so when we recover everything, even though the release allows the ADCP float to come to the surface, there is then a line of spectra that's still attached to the mooring weight. And the idea is that we want to be able to recover the weight, and we want to make sure that we reduce sort of the footprint that we leave in the environment. So we ideally bring everything back, because we're doing these in sort of coastal depths, so in 75, 80 meters of water. The day before, we'd attempted to make the same deployment, and as we dropped the ADCP float into the water, the lid on the canister failed, and suddenly we had 120 meters worth of spectra out the back of the ship.
Oh no!
Which sort of caused a little bit of a scramble, but we got everything back on board. So I then spent about 5 hours untangling and repacking it all, and then the following day we were able to make a sort of almost textbook deployment, and that's the photograph that you see of the wonderful crew on the RV Atlantic Explorer, sort of helping me deploy the system.
It was a great picture for anybody who hasn't seen it yet and is maybe picking this up off of Apple Podcast or Spotify. You can try going to our website. If you go to our website, www.teledynemarine.com/Marine Tech Talk, that's the podcast site, and you will see the image there. You'll also see it on our photo contest winner page, also linked from the website. But it's a great picture, and it really shows teamwork. We all loved it. All of these awards were vetted through our management team and our marketing team, and that one definitely was at the forefront for the teamwork. It just, everybody is sort of very engaged with the mooring, and people are, sort of looking up or touching it, and everybody, you could tell it really was going to take teamwork to get that thing deployed. So congratulations on your win. As a follow-up, though, so this is sort of interesting because you and I have already spoken before about the work that you're doing out there, and this was, one piece of it. You, in a recent email to me, mentioned something that I actually thought was pretty funny. You were all excited about some episodic events, some of which most people wouldn't be super excited about, but you were. Can you explain what those are to our listeners?
Yes, it was. The project is looking at sort of current flow and water movement in mesophotic reefs, and this is whether sort of determining the effects of onshore movement of water, or if not, from the shallow reef system flowing back over mesophotic reefs into the open ocean again. But one of the really interesting parts of this was I wanted to see what happened when we had an episodic event, and in this case, sort of particularly hurricanes. And as you say, probably not many people would be excited about hurricanes heading their way, but fortunately for the island, we were left generally unscathed, a little bit of vegetation damage, but we had a Category 2 hurricane direct hit, which came over the island, and then a week later, we had a second Category 2 hurricane that passed about I think it was about 80 nautical miles to the east of the island. So from a scientific point of view, I got sort of the chance to collect some very unique and invaluable data. So that was the bit that I was very excited by. I was also, at the same time, as being excited by trying to get the data, I was very keen to be able to go out when the sea state settled down to actually make sure that the mooring was still in the right place. And thankfully it was.
That's great. So have you recovered that mooring yet?
Yes, we have. We recovered that last week, and I'm actually in the process at the moment of getting the instruments reset and ready to hopefully deploy again on Saturday, on the 10th.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
That's the plan as it exists at the moment.
So have you had a chance to look at any of the data that you recovered from that first deployment, and are there any findings that you're able to share at this point?
Surprisingly, I haven't actually looked at the current data. It took me a few days to actually get it offloaded. There was, for some reason, it didn't like being connected to my Mac, so I eventually had to borrow a PC off a friend in order to be able to do it kind of smoothly. And I only finished that last night. I have looked at some of because in conjunction with the mooring, I put a couple of temperature sensors on, because I wanted to do a comparison between some pre-existing sensors I had and the data that would be coming off the Sentinel-V. And on the first event is Hurricane Paulette. As she arrived at the island, I can see that there is a 2 degrees centigrade increase in water temperature at about 70 meters. And then over a 12-hour period, that then drops by 8 degrees. And over the next week, just prior to when Hurricane Teddy arrived, you can see these wonderful, and I'm pretty sure when I get to look at the current, the water movement, be able to see these sort of very classical internal waves that are just kind of sweeping into this mesophotic environment, almost like a sine wave. It's actually very cool. So yes, when I actually get a moment to sit down, and I can't wait to look at the current data.
I'm just curious now, so how much well, you're going up for a second deployment, you said, on Saturday. Is that the final deployment, or are you expecting others after that?
No, there should be a third deployment that's scheduled. So the deployment's around about 40 days, and that's sort of based on the battery life of the unit with the profiling, the profiling setup I have, and then also fitting it into the ship schedule as when the mooring can be recovered. So yes, this will be the second one, and then there will be a third deployment planned before the end of the year.
How'd the recovery go? I know you had a small issue with the deployment that we talked about earlier, but how'd the recovery aspect go?
I think the recovery went fine, actually. I was very surprised when I triggered the acoustic release. I think within about 15 seconds, somebody said, "There it is on the surface." And so I was jumping around with joy. And, the team that you saw on the back deck, they were all celebrating as well. So for the role I perform at BIOS, I have generally the majority of the boat operations I do are on the small boat fleet. So they're anywhere from sort of 20 up to 40 feet. So they find it fun. I think that I'm finally going on the ship to do science, but versus just going into the galley to enjoy the good food.
Well, good. You can show them your on-sea prowess now. As you're doing all of these other deployments, I'm certain that you're going to be looking for great photo opportunities, since you've now been a double winner this year, the academic award and the photo award. But why stop there? I mean, you could have a perfect trifecta next year with another submission.
Well, I'll see what I can do. I'll have to rely on some of the crew to help take the photographs. But yes, definitely we'll be taking more pictures to document the events, and then send them in and see what happens, and let the Teledyne team decide whether they like them or not.
Fair enough. We're not a really hard crew, although we do get some great submissions. I think we had 80 or 90 photos this year that were submitted, some really good ones. And so and of course we can never agree initially. It takes us a while of negotiation to get down to the final winners. So everybody has their favorites, and then amongst us we sort of have to bargain on and off as to why we think this particular one needs to win that award. So kudos to you for winning the Teamwork Makes the Dream Work. And hopefully we'll see you again soon on the program, either to talk about the outcome of your research or to talk about another award.
Well, thank you for having me again.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming to see us again. Thank you so much.
And you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Marine Tech Talk podcast. To learn more about BIOS and the work that Tim and his team are doing, we'll put a link to the Twitter and Instagram accounts for the BIOS station in the notes for this episode, as well as a link to Tim's Twitter account. If you have any questions or comments about this show, you can email host Melissa Rossi at marinetechtalk@teledyne.com. If you like this podcast, please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're hearing this show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.